Hi, and welcome to this lab for week one. This is for the Introduction to Modeling in Maya course. In this lab, we're going to review the UV texture editor in Maya and look at a couple of the most used tools and an understanding of some of the techniques that we're going to use. Most of the tools that we're going to use are pretty standard. You're more than welcome to delve into some of the ones that we don't use. But like I've said before in class, I'm just showing you how to do UV maps so that you understand what the UV texture editor is. I personally don't really use UV mapping this way. I use add-ons to do my UV mapping, but even when using those add-ons, you still should have some understanding of being able to do the layouts for UV maps by hand. I'm going to try not to let this video run on too long. We'll see. Alright, so let's go into Maya, and I'll provide this model for you as well. The model that I'm going to be using is just going to be an armchair, and I'll take my FBX file and drag it over, and then I'll hit the F key to focus in on my model. Alright, so I'm not going to apply smoothing to this. It was modeled in a way just to kind of give a very simplistic model. If we smooth it, some parts of it look better, but then other parts of it get jacked up. Of course, we could go in with some edge loops and fix that, but for the purposes of this lab, I don't think that's necessary. Alright, so I'll just grab this entire model. We'll do a really quick planar map to remove any mapping that's already on it. And we'll go to Window and open the UV texture editor. And you can see we have lots of purples and reds, and none of it's right. So the thing to remember with the UV texture editor is the closer it is to a pure blue, the better it is. The closer it is to red, the worse it is. So all of this is bad. So if we just select the object again, and we'll say, for example, create UVs and do a cylindrical map, again, none of it is really very good. We can pull this all the way around to get everything inside of our texture space. Still nothing looks all that good. Alright, so, well, first thing we want to do maybe is to apply a texture to this. So we'll assign a new material. We'll just use Lambert. And in this Lambert material, we'll make the color channel have a checker texture. Hit the 6 key so that the texture shows up. And it's actually not, other than the overlapping, it's not terrible as far as texture size. But because of the overlapping, really can't use it. Overlapping, I mean by the non-pure blue colors. Alright, so let's go and create. I'm going to do an automatic map because it's going to separate it into a lot of different pieces that we can use to kind of show how this process is laid out. Alright, so I'm going to turn off the texture so we can see what we're working with. if you do an automatic map, you can see immediately what happens here is all of the pieces are laid out and there's generally no overlap. It will take your pieces and lay it out in a way to where you can go in by hand and manually lay this out. Now, to navigate through here, make sure you make use of the F key, your focus key. And when you look through this, you can kind of deduce where each piece fits in. Like, you can see that this is one of the arms, and this is probably also a piece of one of the arms. And if you really want to, well, actually you need to kind of figure out which of these UVs matches which polygon over here. You just like over here when you right click and you select what you want to work with here, do the same thing over here, and we want to select a UV. So we grab some UVs here, and over here we can press F and see that. I'm going to turn off the texture. We can see that these UVs, or these vertices, match up with this part of the chair. Alright, so let's say we want to put together the chair part and the back of the chair. I'm probably not going to map this entire thing. Like I said, I want to keep this video small, but I am going to map enough of it to get a couple different ideas and at least the move and sew and the cut tools. Alright, so just like when you're modeling, actually I'll get there in a second. I'll get to that part. When you're modeling, as we've said in class, you want to start with the closest shape to what you're trying to model as you can get. If you're modeling a trash can, you generally will start out with a cylinder, or you could even go with a cube depending on the shape. If you start out with, if you're trying to model a book, you probably aren't going to start out with a torus. If you're trying to model a car, a pyramid might not be the way to go. And this idea is, pretty simplistic, but you'd be surprised at how difficult it seems to be. Now, with that being said, we can kind of look at this model and see that these little pieces of this UV up here, we don't really know where they go. So let's select them, see where they are. And you can see that all of these little pieces match up with the feet, or the legs, or the casters, or whatever you want to call them, of this chair. And there's a couple different things you could do. We could go in, and I want to show you how to use this tool in a moment, how to sew all this stuff together. We could select all these pieces, and we could do a move and sew and move everything together. Alright, and the same thing here, select this, move and sew, and that has taken all of those UVs and attached them together to their other edges. But it also causes a lot of problems, because then you have to go in manually, and you will have to do that eventually. You'll have to go in manually and sew some things together. Like, okay, so we can see that this matches this leg. Okay, but one of these edges, I assume it's this one, matches this section. And well, what's this section? Well, it's the back part of the same leg. Well, why shouldn't this be attached to this? Matter of fact, it probably should. So we can select these pieces and we can move and sew them and put them together. Now we select this UV, right click and go into select shell, use the move tool, move that out of the way. Alright, so that's kind of the workflow we're looking for here. Where does this edge attach? There's a piece missing here. So if you want to find inside of your UV editor where something attaches to, because almost all the time, generally all the time, you have an edge, it's matched up with an edge somewhere else in here. Okay, it's been divided up into another piece, and that edge belongs to another UV layout in here. If I press F, it should show me where the other edge is, but it's not doing it. Maybe there isn't one. Not sure. Ah, over there it is. See, it's over on this piece. So this other piece is the other section here. I'll move it over so you can see what I'm talking about. Select all these UVs and move them over. Alright, so I'll select this edge. You can see it matches up here. This edge matches up here. This one will match up there. This one matches up here. And this one matches up here. Now, so you can see this little piece is supposed to fit in here. Alright, so we can select this. And if we hit move and sew, big problem. Why? Because whenever I hit move and sew, I'm going to attach everything here, but then there's this edge on the outside. Well, which edge is that? Okay, this is the one that doesn't fit anywhere here. So where's the other section for this? It's right here. So whenever I select this entire piece and say move and sew, yes, it moves this piece inside of here, but then it also moves this piece over here as well, which you may or may not want to do. It just depends on how you're trying to cut up your model, how to cut up your texture. So I'm just going to select these bottom parts and right click and move and sew those UVs. Now to get that to that menu, you hold down shift and right click, and you can get this quick menu as far as move and sew or sew them or whatever. Now if I just select sew, everything will kind of go to the middle point. If I select move and sew, it will move this section to where it's going to go. Alright. Now you have to keep in mind when you're doing this entire section here is going to be your texture. Now, whatever area is going to be, let's say we're going to render here. Like we have our render set for here, we have a nice fireplace over here, and you know, whatever. This, if we're planning that this face is the only face that's ever going to be facing the camera when we do a render, then all of these faces that are shown are the sections that we want to take up more of texture space, because that way they'll show more detail. This section over here on the back, although it does still have to be here on the UV texture editor, it's never going to be shown. So you can make it the UVs that take up this section very small, you know. Since we don't really know which angle we're going to do any UVs, we're going to try and make all of the UVs to be as evenly spaced as possible, with the exception of these feet. Now, the feet are going to be probably just a plain color or maybe a wood texture, but they're not really important. Well, generally. So to take these feet and say we select all of these UVs and we go into scale and scale this up very large, so all of these UVs are taking up a lot of space. Yeah, the feet are going to look really nice once we texture them, but I mean, do we want to have these feet to take up more texture space than the areas of the chair that people would be more interested in? No, probably not. Alright, so you kind of see what you're kind of working for. You're trying to get all of this laid out, each section laid out, to where you can bring it into an outside program like Photoshop or what have you. But one of the main things you want to really do is divide this model up into appropriate pieces. Now, when I did the automatic mapping, if I repeat what I've been doing so far as selecting this edge and then seeing where it matches up and doing move and sew, etc., it's going to take a lot of time. And you generally don't have time to waste. And if I go into object mode, I obviously can't separate this up. This is all one piece. But what you can do is, if you go into face and then hit your greater than symbol a few times, you can just select the faces that make up this section. Okay. And now we can see that all of these UVs make up that one leg. If I hit move and sew, all of that gets pushed into this piece. And then I can say select my shell. Now I'll say select my shell and move this out. And it's kind of a mess. Alright, so a couple tools you can use here are these two, relax and unfold. Now, it's hard to really explain what they do. It's better just to experiment with it. If you hit unfold, generally what happens is it gets more or less compacted, but it tries its best to do away with the overlap. If you do a relax, it does it a different way. It kind of tries to stretch it out as much as it can, even if some sections of it get even more jacked up. Now, we could go inside of here and just select these UVs, and now do another relax, and see it kind of gets laid out a little bit more. And go in and move these by hand. You see the purple is not what we want. The blue is what we want. So we kind of move this around until we find where everything's supposed to be. Okay, that's right. I think this one's the one causing the problems. Move. Yeah, it's supposed to be over here. This is supposed to be around here. Alright, so now we got rid of all of the overlap. Alright, so then we can select all of these UVs. Kind of do a relax there, and it will more evenly space them out. Alright. Now, we go in and say, if we look at these other tools, we have to move the UV shell tool, and all that is moving everything this is attached to. Okay, you make your UV shells by attaching these together and doing cuts. All right, now when we get to the other part of the chair, I'll map that out. All right, so maybe we want a little bit more evenly spaced here. So Q to quit that tool. Alright, so select these and we'll use the lattice tool. And we can go in here and get a little bit more evenly spaced. Alright, now we'll go in and just select these ones, lattice tool again. Gonna spread the spider web, as it were. Quit that tool. And rinse and repeat, and rinse and repeat. You get the idea. Okay. So, that's that entire leg laid out to be textured. And you know, you could go in here and mess around and whatever, but again, this leg isn't that important. So then you go to the other legs and repeat and repeat. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Yeah, no it doesn't. So let's see, which leg was this one? That was that one. Okay, so let's do something easier. If we look at this leg, and let's go ahead and use our greater than symbol to select all of it. What would be a good shape to kind of map this out? Now, to get all the way around it, and the bottom, is the bottom important? No, not really. Is the top important? No, not really, because there is an even one. Alright, so what you can do is say, for example, let's create a new UV for just these faces. Alright, we see here it's divided up. Now, we could do a move and sew and do the same thing again. We have this big gaggle of UVs here. Have lots of good times and lots of good fun mapping this out. Or create a new UV and use a cylindrical map. Now, when we first zoom out, we can see what happens. We get a new map, takes up a lot of space. And we go in and make sure that we extend this all the way around so everything gets mapped. Alright, and then go into our get our UVs. Okay, wait a minute. Redo. Control Y, Control Y. Alright, well, you know what? Select that UV, Shift, or sorry, Control, right click. Shell border. No, not that either. Let's just do right click, select shell. Alright, now with our scale tool, shrink it that way, shrink it this way, shrink it that way. Now again, remember this is just one of those feet. Shouldn't really have a huge texture here, or a huge UV to map out the texture for this. Put it right next to the one that's already mapped out, and there you go. These other little UVs down here, let's see what's happening. It just needs moved down. No problem. And this is probably a quad. Yeah. So that's a lot easier. Okay. Now I invite you to do the other two legs the same way. And I'll leave that for a operation for you to do as the student. Get some more practice with just separating parts of a model as far as the way you want it to map. Alright, so I'm going to go into face selection, and I'll just select all of the back part. Okay. And I'm going to do an edit UV, or sorry, create UV, and I'll do an automatic map with that. And over here, I'll right click, select shell. Move this over. Right click, select shell. Move that out of the way. Same thing over here. Was that part of it? Hit F and find out. Yeah, it looks like it was. Okay. Select the shell, move that over. What about this? No, that's part of the other piece. Okay, move that back. What about this? No, that's a different piece too. That's part of the arm. Alright, so let's make sure that we have all of that. Nope, this piece too. Okay. Alright, so we have these pieces laid out that make up the back part, and well, the back of the chair, and we can kind of deduce where everything goes, but maybe we can lay it out in a different way to make it more obvious. Alright, so this part's the top. We can see that here. I can rotate that around. And this is the front section. See? So maybe we can select these UVs, get those out of the way. Select these ones, select this shell, rotate it. Alright, and so we want to attach this part to this part, so we know kind of get the shape as well as we can get it anyway. So we can go to Edge and select that, and we see that these parts are pretty close already. And hit this button, Move and Sew, so it moves this section to match up with the other one. Alright, so then we can go in here and kind of shape this out. And let's see, so where does this attach? It attaches right here. So this is going to be this back line. So this is too small. This entire thing should be a little bit larger. It takes up a very small bit of space. And as a matter of fact, these two polygons should be about the same size as these. Alright, so what we want to do is cut from here to here and separate this piece out. So we can resize this and we can attach this to another piece of it, like on the sides. Alright, so let's go and select this edge here. And let's give it a cut. So now we go and select this UV, select the shell, and can move that piece off. Now these are still selected, or sorry, connected. Like if I select here, you can still see that these match up. And if I were to select these and hit Move and Sew, they'd attach, reattach. But what I want to do, what I'm trying to do, is not change the size of the polygons or, detaching pieces of the object. I'm just detaching pieces of the UV shell, so whenever I put together this texture layout, when I look at it, I can more easily decipher what is what and what goes where. Alright, so select that, hit Move and Sew, and I'll attach that to the other section. Then I'll select some UVs, use my scale tool, resize that, move it. Alright, the whole thing's a little bit too large, so I'll resize it. Alright, so what do we got left? Let's select these edges, these attach to this side. Yeah, that's what I thought. What about just that section? Okay, you can attach that there. And we can attach that on that side. And I guess this section doesn't even attach. I must have moved this over on accident or what? Because this is attached to these other pieces. I guess that's the entirety of this piece. I accidentally moved this piece over. It's not even attached to this, I guess. Yeah, this is part of the arm. So you can kind of see how the workflow generally goes. Alright, so now once I'm finished with the layout for this guy, which I'm not, I want to go in here and move this around a little bit. And remember, you're just laying out, kind of making a canvas. The size of the canvas will vary depending on what you want to do. Like, let's say for these polygons here. Well, what are they? Well, let's take a look. If we go into wireframe mode and see what these are, this piece and this piece, you see here that it makes up this inside. Okay. Now, if I switch back to my display, you can see that, well, that's just this polygon on the inside. Well, half of it is anyway. It's this edge coming down the back of the chair. Now, look how much texture space I have that taken up. It doesn't need that much texture space. As a matter of fact, it's not even going to be seen. Or most of it anyway. Okay. Now, another thing to consider as well is, although the overlapping, is generally something you don't do, what if this chair is supposed to be symmetrical as far as the textures as well as its shape? Is it okay to overlap then? Yes. Alright, so if I wanted to, you can go and take these textures and move it over and flip it to be exactly the same on both sides and be divided in the middle and have your textures overlap. That's fine. Alright, just throwing that out there. But, okay. What else? I guess that's really about it. I mean, that's the main workflow is you divide it up. You divide your model up. Figure out what needs the most texture space. Figure out what's connected to what. And just go to work and move things around. When you're finished, you can use all this extra space to work outside of the box, no pun intended. As far as the way they are inside of this box, it doesn't really matter. It's up to you. You just want to make sure that whenever this texture would be exported out to Photoshop or whatever, that it's at a layout that you or whoever the texture artist would be able to look at and understand, looking at the model and then looking at the texture to understand, okay, when I look at this, okay, that's this chair. That's the back of the chair. Alright, so they can texture it without having to go back and look in Maya and see what goes where, and you kind of want it to be symmetrical as much as possible. But it doesn't really make that big of a difference. You just got to remember that if a polygon layout here, the more space it takes up inside of this box, the larger amount of your texture it can use. Okay? And the more detail it will have, the more texture space it has, the more detail that will show up. I'm just messing around while I explain these key points. You don't have to do any of this. Alright, when you're finished, no matter what you do, you got to make sure that all of your UVs fit inside of this box. Okay. Alright, so that's it for this lab. Try to map out all of the legs and see what you can do with these side panels. As you can see, if I go into object mode, select that section and go into face, and I'll just select one of these faces and grow it. You can see that this is one section. Okay, this bottom section is another one altogether. Maybe a cylinder would be okay with this one as well. I would probably do an automatic map and move things around to match up, just like I did with the back section. Although with the back section I could have easily done a cylindrical map, because there's no bottom and the top really doesn't matter. Okay, so see what you can do with the bottom section, and this is just, you know, that's easy. To create a UV automatic mapping, map it out that way, or you can even do a planar mapping with this and just kind of move the pieces off of each other and then map it out to be a four-way box. That's pretty simple, but see what you can do. Get some practice doing it. Even if after I give you these add-ons you don't really need to know this manual stuff, you'll still need to know how to move some UVs around to fit what you're trying to do, even with the automatic mapping tools that I'm going to share with you at a later date. Okay? Alright, see you in class. Bye-bye.